Hi guys, I publish many novels in our Telegram. Each novel has its own exclusive Telegram channel packed with all chapters in high-quality audio. Plus, if the novel is ongoing, you'll get all future updates and releases automatically, no extra cost, no monthly payment. Just make a one-time payment via PayPal or Ko-fi and enjoy unlimited access forever. Don't miss out on the ultimate audiobook experience. Links in the description. If you can't support me financially, just like and subscribe our videos. Thank you guys, your support means a lot. And as always, enjoy Shadow. This chapter is uploaded by Audiobook Novels. Please donate through our PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 451. The ring trembles. 1. It almost felt as if time had stopped. Ivan's breath caught at his throat as his eyes involuntarily trembled. What? An unfamiliar yet familiar feeling crept up down his back, forcing the hair on his body to rise. The feeling was something he had felt before but had started to forget with the passing of time. He thought he'd never feel it again, and yet, gulp. His stomach started to churn and his palms started to grow sweaty. What is going on? Despite Ivan's best attempts at trying to remain calm, he couldn't. The faceless figure beside him seemed to strip away all sense of rationality from within him. You look nervous. His ears tickled at the sound of the voice. The tone was soft, and yet, it made Ivan's legs buckle faintly. How is this possible? This made no sense at all. As one of the 7 monarchs, Ivan had seen all that there was to see. He was at the pinnacle of humanity, and rarely anything could arouse such emotion from him. It was impossible, especially since the higher one's tier, the more powerful their mind was. That was unless an emotive mage. That was when it all clicked in Ivan's mind. Yes, this is the only explanation. The reason why his body was reacting the way that it was. It was because a powerful emotive mage was influencing his mind. Upon reaching such thoughts, Ivan was able to seal all of his emotions and calm down forcefully. Oh, this was enough to surprise the faceless man. As expected of one of the 7 monarchs. You're indeed quite capable. Pulling his hand away from Ivan, the faceless man moved away and headed for where Atlas was. With the faceless man's presence, Atlas immediately stepped to the side and stood next to the red sofa where the faceless man sat. Ivan stared at the faceless man without saying a word. There's no need to be so tense, the faceless man said, dismissively waving his hand forward and shattering the tension that lingered in the air. Ivan closed his eyes briefly and sat himself down. Though he appeared calm, a strange discomfort crept into his mind. It was an unsettling feeling, like being dragged down into a murky, poisonous pond. While the faceless man had no face, a smile seemed to form on his face upon noticing how obedient Ivan was being. Don't think too much. In this situation, there's no point in thinking too much. What do you mean by that? Ivan asked, his brows furrowing tightly. Unfortunately for him, the faceless man didn't answer him and merely leaned back on the chair while crossing his legs. He glanced at Atlas. You were being quite hasty there, weren't you? I apologize. Atlas lowered his head in apology. Ivan's fist clenched silently upon witnessing the scene. A certain thought entered his mind. Could he be the leader of the inverted sky? Atlas was quite powerful. As far as Ivan could tell, he was quite high up in the rankings. There could only be a few people that could make him behave like that. The more Ivan's thoughts drifted in that direction, the tighter his fists became. A certain title lingered in his mind all of a sudden, and his heart started to pound. The one who walked among us. As soon as the name crossed his mind, the faceless man turned his head and looked at him. It was almost as if he could read his mind, and Ivan felt the chill from before return. It engulfed his mind and made his muscles stiffen. It's fake. Don't fall for it. He immediately tried to repeat what he had done before, but to his horror, he realized that it wasn't working. His heartbeat only grew faster with each second that passed, and his mind grew more and more flustered. Are you feeling all right? You don't look so good. Seeing the state Ivan was in, the faceless man leaned in with a look of worry, but his actions only made Ivan feel more frantic as he moved away. His vision started to blur all of a sudden. Come now, let me check. Just as he stood up, a certain voice pressed his right ear and a hand squeezed down his shoulder, rooting him in place. Ivan felt himself lose control of his entire body. His mind squirmed with panic, and his eyes rigidly turned to face his right where a faceless figure appeared. Wasn't he just... How? That was when the words from before rang in his mind. Don't think too much. In this situation, there's no point in thinking too much. He didn't understand then, but now he did. Before him, whatever he did, it was useless. Your heartbeat is abnormally fast. Ignoring Ivan, the faceless man tilted his head while musing over the situation. You're sweating quite a lot. Your face is pale, and your pupils seem dilated. Turning his head to face Ivan directly, the faceless man shook his head. I'm afraid this is serious. Ivan opened his mouth but found the words unable to leave his mouth. His entire demeanor shifted, and just as his face changed, the faceless figure's hand phased through his chest, from the back and grabbed the bottom half of his face. You, sir, are experiencing something called fear. Phasing through his body, the faceless man stopped right before him. His faceless features started to bend unnaturally, forming a broad and creepy smile that sent chills down Ivan's entire body. Do you find me scary? Clench. Ivan's face tightened as his teeth clenched tightly. He didn't really feel threatened by the faceless figure. He could tell that he couldn't really do anything to him, but it was something else that was bothering him. It was invading his mind, slowly eroding it with each passing seconds. Ivan knew it, and yet he found himself unable to extricate himself from it. Just what sort of sorcery was this? In all his years of life, he had never experienced anything like this before. Pat, pat. Feeling a gentle pat on his cheeks, Ivan saw the faceless man distance himself away from him and sat back down on the chair. Well, while what you're experiencing is not exactly a disease, it is still rather troublesome. In the state that you're in, we can't really have a proper conversation, can we? All right, okay. Sitting back down, the faceless man shrugged his shoulders. I am indeed at fault here. Let me fix you right now. As he lifted his hand and pressed it downward, the massive purple circle visible only to the faceless man within Ivan's body began to shrink. Almost instantly, Ivan felt his breath steady and the sweating ceased. Astonished, Ivan looked at the faceless man in front of him. It really was emotive magic, but to be able to influence him to this extent, what sort of level had he reached? Ivan had met many emotive mages in the past, but none of them were at this level. They were terrifying, but Ivan had ways to deal with them. However, the same couldn't be said for the figure that stood before him. He seemed to have reached a level that was above his own understanding. Good, it looks like you're back to your normal self. With a light tone, the faceless figure leaned back on the chair. So, I don't know where to start. The faceless man looked at Dawn. I never really intended to come here to intrude. I only came here to speak with Dawn before I was presented with that scene. Normally, I'd turn a blind eye, but taking into consideration the reason why you're here, I'm afraid he'll have to step up. With a shake of his head, the faceless man sighed. It's a bit troublesome to stop in, but I've never really seen Dawn this worked up before. It's a nice change of pace. Raising his hands, a gentle snapping sound echoed throughout. Snap. All of a sudden, Ivan's body turned completely still and his eyes went out of focus. Powerful. Silence descended the room shortly after as Sithras turned his head to look at Dawn. What do you think? Erasing his memories of the event will not work. He will still be reminded of the keeper. That is imprisoned. So no erasing. Sithras leaned his cheek against his propped-up fist. Then, kill him? No. Atlas' words made the smile on Sithras' face widen. Of course not. That would cause unnecessary chaos and suspicion on you. Atlas faintly nodded his head. Ku. Bringing his hand over his mouth, Sithras withheld a chuckle. Of course it would. What was I even thinking in suggesting this? So silly of me. Atlas remained silent. He was accustomed to how Sithras behaved. He was a man with 1,000 faces. It was hard to tell what his real personality was. At moments he was lighthearted when he was serious, and at moments serious when he was happy. His face never revealed how he felt inside. And that was what made him so scary, because it was impossible to read his thoughts while he could read your thoughts with a mere glance. A threatening silence suddenly plummeted over the room and Atlas felt a phase on him. When he met the gaze back, he was met with a serious expression. Before we deal with any of this, I'm really curious now. How may I help alleviate your curiosity? By telling me about this disciple of yours. Interlocking his fingers together, Sithras cocked his head faintly. What about him makes you go so crazy? The silence felt stifling. It was dark, and yet, I found it hard to sleep. All I could think of were the words that Delilah whispered not too long ago. After all, you wanted to be engaged with me. I felt my face slowly wince. My head similarly started to throb. It's not like I didn't expect her to know, but I really didn't think she'd take it so seriously. And the way she was acting? Shirley? Wah. Squinting my eyes, I didn't know what to make of the situation. I had been so surprised and taken aback back then that I wasn't even able to deny her words. But did I like her? Could I even afford to like someone at this point in time? I had been so preoccupied with finding my brother that I hadn't really thought about it. However, if I really had to pick someone, then she... Fuck. I ruffled my hair in annoyance. This really was messing up with my mind. especially with the notification that flashed in my vision. It really was annoying. Level 1. Love EXP plus 7%. This chapter is uploaded by Audiobook Novels. Please donate through our PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 452. The ring trembles. 2. What about him makes you go so crazy? Upon hearing the question, Atlas remained quiet for a few seconds. What exactly did he see in Julian that made him act like that? The answer wasn't hard to figure out for him. It wasn't just Julian's talent that attracted him to take him in as his disciple. For someone who had lived for as long as he had seen plenty of talents. Julian was amongst the top, but talent wasn't enough to move him. No, it was something else. His desperation. Yes, his desperation. That was what moved him. Cithras' features remained unchanged, and yet, it almost felt like his brow raised. There was also this clear feel of amusement that exuded from him. His desperation? That's a rather interesting answer. Yes. Atlas lowered his head. It's his desperation. The first time Atlas had met Julian, he was a far cry from being the strongest talent of the four empires. While he was talented in emotive magic, he was severely lacking in every other aspect. There was a reason why his previous nickname was the weakest black star. He was called that because he was truly the weakest black star. And Julian fully understood this aspect of himself. He knew that he was the weakest, and yet, in spite of knowing it, he antagonized everyone to push himself further. His desperation is what makes him push himself to the point of injury and exhaustion. He won't stop until he's achieved his goal. Even now, Julian was the same. While he didn't seem as desperate as he was back then, feeling a lot calmer than in the past, it was that calmness that Atlas appreciated. He had now reached a point where he knew when to stop. He was desperate, but he now knew his limit. Qualities such as these are what makes him stand out from the others. There are talents out there who will listen to anything that I say without any objection. They don't think question but just follow orders. Almost like puppets. However, in the end, they're merely useful at receiving orders instead of providing orders. To be a seat, you need to be able to give orders. Think for yourself. I've taken Julian in since I believe that he knows what he's doing. The current situation is a result of his actions. While I still don't understand how he was capable of killing the Pope of the Church of Heraclius, he was still able to shift the situation in a way that made it seem like he was one of the victims. Atlas still didn't fully grasp what had happened. However, based on all the information he had received along with the message instructing him to be at a specific place and time to witness the scene, he deduced that Julian was either responsible for the Pope's death or had played a significant role in it. And that was a significant achievement considering the relationship between Cithras and Heraclius. Yes, the Pope. I did hear about his death. Leaning against the chair, Cithras propped up his face with his fist. It's one of the reasons why I came here. His death is quite significant. You could even say it's a great achievement, but it was the sudden but that plunged the room into a sudden state of tension. One that even Atlas couldn't remain unfazed with as his body stiffened. Slowly turning his head, he saw Cithras' empty stare looking directly at him. Do you really think this is a coincidence? It was enough to make him stutter. Pardon? Do you really think Emmett would allow something like this to happen? Do you? Pausing, Cithras shook his head and shifted his attention away from Atlas. As he did, he shook his head while mumbling, "No, maybe you don't. None of you understand him like I do. Anything he does has a purpose." Atlas' brows furrowed upon hearing Cithras' mumbles. This hadn't been the first time he had heard such words from Cithras. For some reason, since knowing him, he had always been wary of Heraclius. It almost felt like an obsession, like something was chasing Cithras back. It was enough to make his obsession turn into paranoia. Whenever something happened, he would always mumble, "Is this your doing? What are you planning? I know it's you." But not once did Heraclius ever show up or show hints of being present. Was he really overthinking, or did Heraclius have a hand in all the situations like Cithras had mentioned? "There's no need to doubt me." Cithras casually waved his hand to dispel Atlas' thoughts. "You'll eventually come to understand, Dawn. While Emmett might have never been strong, he sees things that we don't. Be it the past, present, or future, he can see it all. But that's not the most bothersome part of him. No, if it was just that, then it would have been manageable." A powerful silence plunged the room as Cithras stopped speaking. It was a tense and stifling silence that made one capable of hearing the sound of their own heartbeat. The most bothersome part is the fact that he can influence all those realities. He may be dead, but that doesn't mean he's gone. There's no way he's gone. Especially not when his brother is still alive. Cithras quietly mumbled while leaning his head forward a little. "It's impossible. He's here. I know he is." Atlas swallowed quietly while staring at Cithras. His current presence felt suffocating, almost unbearable. It was always like this whenever it was about Heraclius. Thankfully, it didn't last too long. Anyways, as I was saying, be careful. Shifting his attention back to Atlas, Cithras' tone became lighter. Investigate the Pope's death carefully. I want all details reported to me after you're done. Understood. This wasn't much of a problem for Atlas. Good. Satisfied, Cithras stood up from his seat and walked over to Ivan. Pressing his hand against Ivan's head, he mumbled, his strength is not bad. I'd say he ranks quite high in this world. Getting rid of such a character will lead to quite a bit of trouble. Since I also can't erase his memories of the event, well, just change them. A faint and powerful pulse of mana swept over the room. Atlas' clothes fluttered while a white glow manifested over Ivan's body. His blonde hair fluttered back and his face turned pale. Cithras remained unmoved while his faceless features showed no hints of emotion. The process lasted half a minute. By the time he was done, the room returned to how it was before. Good. Nodding in satisfaction, Cithras looked at Atlas. There are 2 more things that I wanted to say. Please. I've lost connection with the sword. The smell. It's gone. Raising his hand, a white pulse spread out from Cithras' hand. It gently spread throughout the entire academy before fading. I can't sense it anymore. How could? That's what I'd like to know. Atlas' brows furrowed. He knew exactly what Cithras was talking about. Cithras had warned him in advance about the presence of the sword within the academy. Originally, he had been placed in this academy due to the presence of another artifact, but it wasn't long after that another artifact appeared. Given the timing of its appearance, it was clear that one of the first years was in possession of the sword. Furthermore, given how it had also made it to the capital during the 4 Empire Summit, further narrowed down the list of potential possessors. In Atlas' mind, Leon was the prime suspect. As a swordsman, it only made sense that he was the one in possession of the artifact, and yet, he had never truly found anything from him. And just when he thought he had found more leads, the scent disappeared. What did this mean? There's not many things that can hide the scent of the sword. It's either an artifact or the sword is broken. Given how hard it is to break the sword, it's most likely the first option. But what kind of artifact is capable of doing this? I've got a few in mind. Cithras casually waved his hand and tossed a book in Atlas' direction. I've made a list over here. Investigate the first years and see if any of them are in possession of these artifacts. If they are, then Cithras stopped there, but the meaning of his words was clear. Understanding this, Atlas quietly lowered his head and nodded. Good. Cithras nodded in satisfaction. It was then that Atlas suddenly felt a shift in surroundings as a broad smile manifested over his faceless features. Now onto the second thing. It was a creepy and unnerving smile that brought chills down the room. I think I found Noelle's whereabouts. Throb. A sudden throb shook me out of my thoughts. When I looked down, I noticed my ring, trembling uncontrollably. What's going on? Immediately, I dove my consciousness into the room in hopes of understanding what was going on. But the moment I entered, the sight that greeted me shook me. Rumble, rumble. The palace that stood within the ring trembled. From the pillars that held the structure to the very ground. What? Stunned. I didn't know how to react to the sudden situation. I only snapped out of it when I saw Almighty and Pebble rush out of the palace and head to me. Human. Almighty's voice was calm. Something is happening to the box. Box. Blinking my eyes, it took a moment for me to understand what it was trying to say. But soon it hit me. The sword. I didn't hesitate to rush into the trembling building. Rumble. Rushing into the building, the rumbling became more pronounced. For a brief moment, I almost lost my footing, but I kept going. I wasn't worried about being buried in the palace in case it collapsed, since I could just bring my consciousness out of the place. I was, however, worried about the sword. While I was still unaware of what it did, I knew that it was incredibly important. I couldn't allow anything to happen to it. Clank. Opening the door that led to the back room, my eyes immediately fell on the box that held the sword. Clacka, clacka, clacka. Jumping from side to side, the wooden box started to crack and split apart. It only grew worse. With the passing of the seconds, and just as I laid my eyes on the box, it fully tore apart, revealing an intricate-looking sword. A powerful pulse of mana spread through, sucking the air out of my lungs and pushing me back. Wah! Right as the sword escaped the box, a bright glow enveloped the sword. It left me blinded for a brief moment, stinging my ears. I even felt a couple of tears trace down my cheeks as I forced my eyes open. It was then that I saw it. The sword, it hovered right in front of me, almost as if it was alive. Opening my eyes wide, I silently swallowed my saliva as a thought occurred to me. What if? I reached out to grab the sword with my left hand while looking down my right forearm. Right where a four-leaf clover tattoo appeared. What if? I pressed down on one of the leaves. This chapter is uploaded by Audiobook Novels. Please donate through our PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 453. The ring trembles. 3. I didn't know if it would work. Thinking about it, I had only ever tried the third leaf on humans. But what if? What if I could use the third leaf on objects? Would I be able to go to the past and see what had happened with it? Would I learn more about the sword? I wasn't sure, but it was worth a try. It was for that reason that I pressed onto the third leaf. But 11. All I was met with upon pressing the third leaf was silence. I waited for a few minutes, hoping for something to happen, but nothing happened. Maybe ITLL happened soon? I wasn't disheartened, considering how in the past 2 occasions it took a little bit of time for the third leaf to display to me the past. I just thought that with time I'd be able to relieve the hidden past of the sword. I'm curious as hell. Thinking about it, I knew nothing about the sword. All I knew was that it was precious and was used to kill me in the future. Knowing its capabilities will help me understand why it is so precious and why it was used to kill me. That was all I really wanted to know at the moment, and hence why I decided to wait patiently for the effect of the third leaf to appear. I thought I'd appear soon enough, perhaps in a few hours or even half a day later, but standing within the confines of the palace within the ring, nothing happened. Even as the next day approached. Nothing? I was disappointed by the outcome, but not surprised. After all, I was already mentally prepared for such a result. It would make sense considering that I had tried it on an object instead of a human. I guess it doesn't work. Or perhaps objects took longer. Whichever it was, I could only sigh to myself and go out of the ring space. A blinding light seeped into the room as my eyes fluttered open, forcing me to squint against the sudden brightness. As my vision adjusted, I took in the surroundings of the medical ward, the faint scent of rubber hanging in the air. The room was silent, save for the soft rustle of the curtains as a faint breeze drifted in, causing them to billow gently like ghostly silhouettes. Right? Recalling my position, a long sigh escaped me. I was to remain in this place for as long as they could ensure that the soul within me was contained. About that, things aren't looking so good. While Julian was indeed sealed, it wasn't to a high degree. Due to Ivan's interference, the original spell that was supposed to seal him was only half completed. The chains that were currently binding Julian were rather weak, and it felt like they could break at any second. Ideally, I'd asked them to redo the spell, but with everything that had happened, I wasn't so sure this was a good idea. In the end, I still bought myself some valuable time. What I really needed to do was get Kira to help me with the mirror. Only then would I be able to truly have some breathing room. Well, I'll leave it that for now. For now, I just wanted to go back to my own dorm. Of course, I knew things wouldn't be so simple. The Pope was dead, and Ivan and the Keeper were both aware of my involvement. I was still confused as to why Ivan suddenly left, but I didn't really have much time to dwell on that matter. I needed to think of a way to sort out this situation. But how exactly can I? To talk. A sharp knock echoed through the room, followed by the door creaking open. A figure stepped in, his long blonde hair catching the light as his golden eyes softened upon meeting mine. His very presence exuded a serene calmness, and the faint smile tugging at his lips felt oddly reassuring. Looks like you're feeling better. A bit. That's good. Atlas walked towards the nearby chair and took a seat. As if he could sense my worries, his lips parted open as he spoke. I've already handled everything. You don't need to worry. Dada? Handled everything? What was he? Ivan won't give you problems, and Keeper Matthias will be released next month. The Church of Oracleus has been silent regarding this matter, so neither you nor Keeper Matthias will face any trials. Yes? The Church of Oracleus has been silent? Could it be that they were aware of what had happened? But you don't need to worry too much about your identity. I've also handled that matter. You should thank our leader for that. Dada. A sudden lump formed in my throat. Recalling the scene that I had witnessed with the sword, my heart almost leaped out of my chest. Could it be? He handled all the troublesome matters. He'll take care of the rest so you don't have to worry. And just rest. Pausing, Atlas looked directly at me. Or to be more specific, through me. Regarding the soul within your body. I want ask since it doesn't necessarily concern me. Yes. I nodded slowly. Even if Kira didn't help, I had my own ways to handle it. That's good. Appearing satisfied, Atlas stood up from his seat and prepared to leave. Just as he arrived by the door, his feet came to a sudden stop. All right. I almost forgot. His head slowly turned in my direction. We've found the whereabouts of Mortem. Scribble, scribble. A gentle scribbling sound echoed within the silence. Its rhythm steady and soothing as it echoed softly through the room. Pausing, Hollow dipped the pen into the nearby ink. Just as the pen was about to touch the paper again, A soft voice quietly echoed. You've been quite busy, Hollow. Sir, Ivan. Halting his movements, Hollow looked up and immediately lowered his head to address the approaching figure. It is a pleasure to see you. Ivan's every movement exuded an effortless grace, like that belonging to a top noble. Yet an oppressive aura clung to him like a shroud. It was a weight so heavy that it seemed to seep into the air, suffocating anyone who dared to meet his gaze for too long. You don't need to be so formal with me, Inquisitor. The two of us have known each other for quite some time. It's only appropriate. Well, all right. Ivan waved his hand and sat down. As he did, his eyes paused on the letter Hollow was writing. Are you writing a report on the situation? Yes, I have been asked to report all the details of the situation, especially given the final verdict of the situation. I see. Ivan sighed. I tried my best, but given the produced evidence, this was the best I could achieve. Thankfully, the Church of Heraclius has been rather quiet. Within a month, we can get Matthias. That's all that matters. Yes, we're truly fortunate for that. With a faint smile, Hollow began to write again. His movements were smooth, and the ink glided across the papers. Scribble. Ivan remained quiet while Hollow started writing again. He simply closed his eyes and relished the quietness of the room. What do you think? Eventually, he broke the silence, prompting Hollow to stop. About? Matthias' involvement. Do you really think he's guilty? No, I don't think Matthias is guilty. Then are you saying that a mere cadet is capable of killing a pope and subjecting Matthias to such an unfavorable situation? Hollow remained quiet for a brief moment before placing the pen down. I don't know. Truthfully, I'd like to think it's impossible, but after hearing Matthias' words, perhaps it's possible. Oh? What did Matthias say to you? He said that it felt like he could see. Ivan raised his head, meeting Hollow's as he frowned. He said that it felt as though he was being read like an open book, as though he knew in advance what his every move would be. Hollow's tone was serious, and just for a brief moment, the room turned completely quiet. Neither side said a single word. Eventually, however, Ivan stood up and the tension shattered. I guess that's that. I think it's time for me to return. You will be returning? So quick? Yes, I have several things to handle. That's a pity. Carefully dipping the pen in the ink and placing it on the holder, Hollow stood up and bowed. Thank you for bestowing upon us your presence. I will never forget your favor. Don't worry about it. Ivan dismissively waved his hand and turned around. I'm just doing my job. As the last echoes of his words lingered in the air, his figure dissolved into nothingness. Heavy, oppressive silence descended over the room, broken only by the faint creak of the chair. As Hollow leaned back, with a tired sigh, he reached for the pen once more, the quiet scratch of its tip against paper, the only sound accompanying his solemn expression. It's as you've predicted, Sir Ivan. He mumbled, your clone has been brainwashed. Was there any reaction? Holding onto the communication device, Atlas' face turned weird. He thought back to the moment he revealed to Julian the news about Mortem. For lack of better words, he looked confused. Mortem? The god? He's alive? These were the exact words he had said upon hearing such words. The confusion on his face also looked genuine. Confused? Yes, I'm quite sure. I see. Perhaps I was overthinking things. Atlas' eyes narrowed faintly upon hearing such words. He was still confused as to why he had been asked to tell Julian of such an event. Could it be that he suspected Julian of being related to Heraclius? It never hurts to try anyway. As Cithra's tone grew light, Atlas' head turned to face a certain direction. There he could feel a powerful silhouette leaving. Ivan has just left the academy premises. The situation looks to be resolved. I'm glad to hear that, Cithras replied, his tone carrying hints of amusement. It's unfortunate that you don't have much time left. I'm afraid it won't be long before the academy will be put under heavy scrutiny. Try to find the artifacts before then. Pardon? Atlas showed hints of surprise upon hearing those words. Is something going to happen soon? Possibly. Cithras replied bluntly. I'm quite far, so I couldn't exactly tell, but Ivan's body felt more like a very well-made clone than a real person. Well-made clone? Atlas' brows furrowed. How come he couldn't tell? I wouldn't be surprised if you couldn't tell, Dawn. After all, only in the mirror dimension can you fully utilize your powers. Had you been in your normal form, you would have been able to tell instantly. Yes, but if it's a clone, how come you let it be? Why? With an amused chuckle, Cithras replied, they've gotten a little arrogant lately. I just wanted to play with them for a bit. Could it be? Cithras' next words made Atlas' entire body freeze. They certainly won't forget me after all of this. This chapter is uploaded by Audiobook Novels. Please donate through our PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 454. Sudden interview. You're free to go. What's with that look of yours? No, it's just that. I'm free to go? Like that? Just free? You think that you should be staying here more? I hesitantly nodded my head. Yes. Usually, I would stay for a bit longer than the time that I had currently spent. Furthermore, with everything that had happened, surely there was more to check, right? What for? For my injuries. Which are? Opening my mouth, I was left stumped. Thinking about it, what were my injuries? In fact, was I even injured in the first place? Checking my body to see for any injury, I realized that I wasn't injured at all. I was as healthy as I could be. Then, the only issue you had was with a foreign entity taking place in your body, right? That's not something that I can handle, and since the Chancellor and the others are not here, what is the point in keeping you here? That is, unless you want to stay here. As the doctor's eyes narrowed, I shook my head. No. I desired nothing more than to leave this place. By now, I was frequenting this place so much that it almost felt as though it had become my second residence. I couldn't let that be true. Okay, go. I've got other things to do. Yes. Without further thought, I picked up my stuff and returned to the dorms. The distance wasn't far, about a 5-minute walk. It was dark outside, and a faint breeze wafted in the air. I wonder if they'll leave things be for now. The fact that I was possessed was now something most of the higher-ups within the academy were aware of, and although it was currently contained, it was still not completely taken care of. I was worried they might try something later. The thought only made me reinforce my thoughts about hurrying up and getting Kira to lend me the mirror. Creak. As I opened the door of the residence, I saw faint lights coming from the nearby common room. People are still awake at this time? Surprised, I checked the time. Sure enough, it was 2:53 a.m. Who's awake at this hour? Curious, I decided to get a better look. Either way, I had to head to my room, which was in the same direction. A thought occurred to me as I drew closer. Surely it's not Teresa, right? I did recall her being quite addicted in the past. Ah fuck, this is too much. My steps came to an abrupt halt when I heard a familiar voice shouting in frustration. It was none other than Kira. What is she doing awake at this hour? Kira wasn't the type to stay awake at this hour. Something didn't add up with the situation. Curious, I decided to get a better look. I want to die. The closer I got, the more hysterical Kira's complaints became. It also made me more curious. What exactly was torturing her so much? Why was she? Stop shouting. I'm trying to focus. As another voice suddenly rang, my brows jumped up a little. Aoife? She was also awake? What in the world were the two doing up at his hour? It's easy for you to say. It's not. I just don't waste time complaining like you do. The more time you waste complaining, the harder it is to focus. She's right, you know. Ah fuck. A third voice sounded, and my confusion only grew from there. Evelyn? Why is Evelyn also there? Was there some sort of event that I wasn't aware of? Unable to hold my curiosity any longer, I decided to directly enter the common room. You two wouldn't get it. For you it might be easy. As if sensing my presence, all three stopped talking and turned their heads in my direction. Oh, you're here. Oh. How was your vacation? Compared to the reaction that I was expecting, it felt rather lukewarm. It was almost as if they weren't surprised by the fact that I was there. This felt even more odd to me. What's going on here? When I got a better look, I was surprised to see the numerous books that were stacked at the top of the table. Seeing how messy the table was, I could tell that the three of them had been studying for quite some time. This made me even more surprised. What? Why do you look so shocked? Turning to look at Kira and then the books, I didn't need to open my mouth to express my thoughts. TSK. With a click of her tongue, Kira leaned back on her chair. It's not like we have a choice, all right? Do you think I want to be here with these two to study? I'd rather die. Hey, you were the one who begged us. Shut up. I never begged. Really? As Aoife raised her brow, she suddenly retrieved a recording device. The drowsiness in Kira's face snapped away and her back turned upright. Holy fuck. You recorded that? Nope. Aoife shook her head, a small smirk tugging at her lips. But you just admitted to begging us. With a caca that seemed oddly similar to Kira's, Aoife turned to Evelyn and high-fived her. She too let out a familiar caca. What the fuck? What did the two of them go through over the past few days to become like this? I swear to God. Kira raised her fist, ready to swing it. But just as she raised it, her eyelids dropped and she soon lowered it, mumbling something along the lines of, too tired for this shit. See what it'll do to you tomorrow. With a hua, Kira stretched her body and slumped head first on the table. I looked at the scene for a few seconds before shaking my head. Besides looking tired, Kira, also looked pretty depressed. Should I cheer her up? Hey, Kira. Leaning her head to the side, just enough for her eye to face me. I clenched my fist in. Encouragement. Cheer up. There's a lot worse things, you know? Like being trapped inside an underground hole of water. What does that? I just mean well. A strange silence fell over the room. Seeing the looks that everyone was giving, I frowned. What's with the atmosphere? Fuck. Covering her face with both hands, Kira's eyes turned bloodshot. Phew. Raising both hands up, she looked up. I can't deal with this shit. No fuck. Kill me. Shaking her head, Kira grabbed her stuff and directly left the common room. I stared at her, departing back with a stupefied look. What just happened? But if that wasn't enough, Evelyn followed right after her. As she passed me, I heard her soft mumble, that was too much even for me, as she shook her head in disappointment. The hell? PFTT. A snickering sound brought me out of my confusion. Came from Aoife, who was the only one remaining in the common room. Hook. That was pretty funny. Not bad. Oh? Funny? What was funny? PFT. You should have seen Kira's face. If only I could have saved a picture of her face when you told her the joke. Joke? What joke? I told a joke? When? Hook. Don't worry. I thought it was funny. You don't need to be embarrassed. Amidst my confusion, Aoife stood up and grabbed her stuff. Walking past me, she covered her mouth again. KHK. I didn't know you had that in you. Anyways, you should sleep. Yes? We've got an interview to attend tomorrow? Taken aback, I fell into a short daze. By the time I snapped out of it, Aoife had already left. Interview? What sort of? It was then that it hit me. Being trapped inside an underground hole of water. I just mean well. I bumped my fist against my palm. So that's what they were talking about. I shook my head. No wonder they didn't like it. It was all about the delivery. All about the delivery. The interview was a simple event organized by the Academy in order to get the first years to familiarize themselves with the second years. Given that, in the past each year didn't have much of a relationship with the other, the Academy figured it was best to do this in order to improve the relationships with the cadets. This was why they organized an interview. It was just a friendly event for the first years. Hey, Linus. We should hurry up. The interview will be starting soon. Fixing his tie, Linus looked towards the door of his dorm. Several cadets were waiting for him. There. Yes, I'm coming. Shifting his attention back towards the mirror, Linus fixed his tie. As he did, he made sure to cover the faint purple marks on his neck. They were still there. His teeth clenched tightly at the sight of them. He's no different than how he was in the past. Thinking about the events that had transpired not too long ago, Linus' eyes narrowed. No, he's even worse. He seemed to resemble more and more the same figure in his nightmares. From his cold and indifferent gaze to his unhinged and crazed expression, Linus bit his lips as he thought about what had happened in the room. From how he had been so easily taken by him and almost killed. The entire time he was helpless. He could hardly put up a fight. And it was that thought that made him angry with himself. I have to hurry up and get stronger. He didn't have much time left, and the gap between him and his brother was only growing. Each moment, Linus knew he had to become stronger faster. But how exactly could he do that? It would be great if he could become the year's Black Star. But that was impossible. This year's Black Star, he was a monster, someone whose talent far outclassed his. The gap in talent between the two was enough to make him feel despair. So how could he become stronger? Linus? Coming. Snapping out of his thoughts, Linus forced a smile. Then, shifting his attention towards the entrance of the room, he rushed to where his classmates were. In either case, he was going to see his brother again soon. He really wanted to see how people perceived his brother within the Academy. Could he still maintain that facade of his? Linus thought he couldn't, and he was proven right shortly after in the interview. But not in the way that he expected. This chapter is uploaded by Audiobook Novels. Please donate through our PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 455. Sudden Interview. 2. It was the next day before I knew it. I woke rather early. Not intentionally, as Leon was the one who woke me up. He said something along the lines of, "How was your vacation?" I almost had the urge to smack him right then and there. If only he knew what I went through. Surprisingly, he didn't ask much with regard to what happened. The same was true for the others. Had they reached a point where they were used to stuff happening to me? Or was there more to it? In any case, I was soon led into a large room. If I could describe the place with one word, it'd be chaotic. A little to the left, please. Yes, that. We were in the makeup room, and everyone looked to be putting on some sort of makeup. The one who seemed to be the most excited was Evelyn, who hovered around the others while chirping about what they could do better and what looked bad. She was oddly excited about this. Is she okay? Truthfully, I don't know. Leon shook his head while looking at Evelyn. He then added, she's changed quite a bit since returning from the household and meeting Teresa. I can see that. Aoife, your face is a little pale. Give it a bit of flash and pop some color. We don't want you looking like a corpse out there. This big. Kira. Sigh. What am I going to do with you? Remove that scowl from your face or we'll really look bad in front of the cameras. I swear. Teresa. Well, you're a child, so it doesn't matter. Wait, I also suddenly noticed it. Why is Teresa here? The girls asked for her to be let in the interview, and nobody had anything against it. I absent-mindedly nodded my head upon hearing Leon's words. If it was allowed, then what else could I say? And you? Evelyn paused and frowned. She looked stumped. My eyes widened when I turned my head in the same direction she was looking at. What is she doing here? Standing before Evelyn was a young girl with glossy black hair that cascaded just to her shoulders. She appeared to be around Evelyn's age, and her dark, shimmering eyes seemed to absorb all the light around her. Evelyn raised her thumb. Your makeup looks good. Well done. I'm proud of you. I still haven't put on my make. Hi. It's so hard being the group stylist. What? Seeing how quiet the room was, Evelyn turned around. Only then did she realize that everyone was looking at her with even looks. What is it? Why are you all looking at me like that? She seemed to shiver under their collective gazes, and I continuously flicked my head between Leon and Delilah. Yes, Delilah. What is she? Don't ask me. Leon answered in a deadpan tone. I don't know anything. I will not know anything. Nor will I ever. He then walked towards Evelyn and dragged her out of the room. I stared in his direction, stupefied. I only snapped out of it when a voice called out for me. Julian? It was Delilah. She somehow made her way behind me before I knew it. Unable to hold my curiosity, I asked, what are you doing here? Supervising. In this form? It's less noticeable. Was it really? Doing a double take on her, she really did seem to think so. Is she not aware of her looks? While Aoife, Kira, Evelyn, and most of the cadets were quite good-looking, Delilah still stood out quite a lot. Even if she looked different due to having become smaller, the invisible pressure that came out of her body was hard to ignore. This was probably why nobody had approached her. Well, whatever. Nobody could do anything to her anyway. Rummaging through my pocket, I took out a chocolate bar. Here, take this. Delilah's feet slowed the moment her gaze fell on the chocolate. Looking around, she reached out for my hand, took the bar, and snapped a piece off. I cocked my head at her action. You only going to eat one? You eat it. Yes? Take it. Though I was confused, I eventually ended up eating the candy. It was a little too sweet for me. Thank you very much for coming. I'm Dyrk Conaway. He'll be leading the interview today. A man who looked no older than 50 came to greet us the moment we came out of the room and onto the stage where the interview was going to be held. He had short black hair neatly arranged into a middle split, and he wore a set of square glasses. My first impression of him was that he seemed to be quite extroverted as he shook hands with all of us. I've heard a lot about the five of you. It's a pleasure finally seeing you here. We will begin the interview in a couple of minutes while we wait for the other groups to attend. Please make yourselves comfortable for now. Thank you. Everyone replied politely to the man. In total, there were over a dozen cadets that were going to be interviewed. Those from the first year, those from the second year, and those from the third year. Each year had several groups. Of those, Leon, Evelyn, Teresa, Aoife, and Kira formed one group. I wasn't included, nor was I participating in the interview. With the groups already having been made, there was no room for me, which was good. I didn't really want to be in the interview, but what attracted his attention, and the attention of the staff, was Lila, who bowed her head. The most. About 60% degrees. How cute. Look at how cute she is. I could hear the whispers of the staff next to me as they all took in the sight in front of them. Then, who is she? She's really pretty. Is she also a student? But she doesn't seem to be wearing a uniform? They're all pretty, but she's... Everyone finally caught sight of Delilah, who was standing a little further back. Her looks were undeniable as everyone found their eyes drifting in her direction. Coughing, I locked eyes with the staff, and it was only then that they realized their mistake, hastily returning to their work. How troublesome. I turned to look at the girls who were huddled together like baby chicks. Are you guys ready for the interview? Yeah, sort of. Aoife glanced at me before she scowled. Leon lectured all of us this morning. I can still hear the sound of his yapping in my ears. That's kind of rude, princess. But am I wrong? Also, why are you calling me princess? Are you not? Still, Seeing how Aoife and Kira were bickering, it didn't seem like I needed to be worried about them being nervous. I was kind of glad. The less nervous they were, the less likely they would slip up and make any errors. Although they weren't the only group that was being interviewed, a single misstep could be quite troublesome. Actually, it didn't really matter. I wasn't participating. Excuse me. Right then, someone tapped me on the shoulder. Turning around, a girl with long black hair and a mole right underneath her right eye met my gaze. She seemed unfamiliar. Who? Excuse me? Is there something wrong with my face? Oh, I'm sorry. Shit, I got caught staring. I quickly made up an excuse. I was spacing out for a bit. I didn't really get much sleep. Haha, that's very understandable. I also have those days. The girl laughed for a bit. She looked a little younger than I was, and her expression seemed peculiar. Do I know you from somewhere? I asked out of curiosity. Felt like I had seen her before, but I couldn't quite place where. Me? Well, I don't think you would. This is after all the first time the two of us are meeting. The girl waved her hand at my question. That makes sense. But who exactly was she? Who do I have the pleasure of meeting? All right. The girl extended her hand. Elizabeth Smith, the third-year Black Star. No wonder she felt vaguely familiar. So she was the famous third-year Black Star. I had heard rumors about her but never properly seen her due to her guild affairs. Typically, starting from the second year and on, the cadets would spend less time in the academy to participate in the respective guild that they belonged to. The guild they belonged to typically selected them through the draft that happened each end of the year. I missed mine during the time I spent home, but I was quite glad. After all, I didn't really want to be part of a guild. I heard that you didn't join a guild. What are your thoughts about joining one? Well, I'm not sure. I was able to quickly discern her intentions. Is she here to recruit me into the guild she's in? So, not sure? I think you should consider it. If you join a guild, you'll be able to enter the mirror dimension whenever you. She paused halfway through her sentence and looked up. Her face stiffened. Excuse me? Julian. And then a voice reached my ear. When I turned around, I saw Delilah standing right behind me. When did she get here? Yes? Is there something you need? No. Then, I was curious. Curious? Yes. Delilah nodded and just stopped talking. I blinked my eyes, unsure of how to proceed. Elizabeth also looked awkward and a strange silence fell over. She seemed to want to say something, but whenever her mouth opened, she would close it. The interview looks to be starting. If you're willing to join a guild, please tell me. In any case, I have to go now. It was a pleasure to meet you. Then, as if she felt too pressured by something, she excused herself. Delilah's head turned, tracing her retreating figure. Then, turning her attention back to me, she said, she got scared. I think so too. I turned my head to look at Delilah, who stared straight at me. As she blinked her eyes, she said, you have a scary face. Really? This is the first time I'm hearing this. Whenever someone commented about my face, they'd say something along the lines of handsome, indifferent, and stuff like that. Never once heard scary. And it wasn't. Delilah was the one who had scared her away. Delilah tilted her head slightly while closely examining my face. Then she tilted it to the other side, and once more to the opposite side before finally breaking into a smile. Maybe? Very helpful. I waved my hand at her. All right, whatever. You were kind of useful this time, so it doesn't matter. MHM. Delilah extended her hand, and I knew in an instant what she wanted. Rummaging through my pocket, I handed her another chocolate bar. She then unwrapped the paper and handed me a piece. I looked at the piece in my hand. No, I already had one. You can. Your face is less scary when you eat chocolate. Is that true? Yes. That was something new. I'm going. Good luck. Staring at her retreating figure, I shifted my gaze to the chocolate in my hand before placing it in my mouth. It was still too sweet, but it didn't taste so bad. Also, my face wasn't scary. The interview was formatted like a talk show. One host, DYRK Conaway, interviewed the guests with some questions about their personal lives, thoughts on some matters, and light banter. There were a total of 6 groups, 2 from each year. Is everything ready? DYRK asked one of his assistants as he read through the script for tonight's show. Yes, everything is ready. All the guests are seated, and we're just waiting for you. Okay. Tell them that I'm coming. With a light sigh, DYRK placed the script down and massaged his forehead. What's the projected viewer rating for this? 0.1%. The assistant replied after some hesitation. That low? They're only students and there is no fighting. This is already being quite generous. What about the second years? Didn't they just come from the summit? Shouldn't there be a lot of views because of them? About them? It's true that they're hot right now, but their fame still lags behind some of the Other groups here, in particular the third years, their accumulated achievement is not something the first and second years can compete with. Is that so? DYRK closed his eyes. Okay, focus on them more. We need to squeeze out as many views as possible. The interview was going to be broadcast to the Empire. There was no real hype around it, and it would be a miracle if people were interested in watching. For DYRK, who had taken on the project, this was a huge blow. I also heard this year's summit winner isn't participating. Don't remind me. With a bitter smile, DYRK shook his head and shrugged. Adjusting his glasses and suit, he straightened his back before taking his first step toward the studio. We can only hope that something happens today. He closed his eyes and put on the most brilliant smile he could muster. And even if nothing exciting happens, we can make it happen. Who knows, maybe we can make something out of this segment. And with these words, he left. This chapter is uploaded by Audiobook Novels. Please donate through our PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 456. Sudden Interview. 3. The lights flashed onto the set. Behind a large wooden table sat DYRK, and across from him, on multiple sofas, were 6 distinct groups of gorgeous people. As expected of the most elite cadets in the Empire, their looks are nothing to scoff at. Their looks can make anyone jealous, don't you think? It makes you question if we truly belong in the same world. A man said next to me all of a sudden. Surprised, I turned my head to see a hand extended in my direction. What's up with everyone? And their hands? It felt like everyone wanted to shake my hand. Nice to meet you. I'm Jack Benally, the writer for the show. I shook his hand back. As we let go, he asked, You're the cadet who won in the summit, aren't you? Yes, I am. You've got an interesting group. Group? A smile played on his lips, and just as I turned my head, I witnessed Evelyn receiving a slap on her hand from Teresa, who shot her a glare. Meanwhile, Kira, who had been watching the scene, burst into a light laugh and slapped the sofa beside her. I don't know them. Ha ha ha. It's nice to see such a cheerful group. It's been a while since we've last seen one like theirs. Oh? What did he mean by that? Noticing my confusion, the man's eyebrow arched as he asked, Right, you're still in your second year. Let's just say that the cadets from the other academies don't get along like this. You call that getting along? Well, you'll understand what I mean with due time. For now, I just wanted to introduce myself. Couldn't help but to after seeing those clips. Alarmed, I looked at him. Clips? What clips? The only thing I got in return was a smile. So you don't know? Covering his mouth, he suddenly laughed. Haha, this is going to be fun. Within the audience seats, several cadets sat down. There were over 100 cadets, all belonging to different years, sitting to watch the interview. Look, isn't that your brother? As Linus took a seat, one of his classmates pointed in a certain direction. It was there that Linus caught sight of a familiar figure. Standing with his arms crossed, his figure looked imposing. He didn't do anything, and yet, his presence alone seemed to draw the eyes of many. Is he not participating in the interview? Overhearing the question, Linus suddenly looked at the stage. It was there that he realized his brother wasn't moving. I see. Was this his method of avoiding suspicion? By not participating, he didn't have to worry about exposing himself. That's a pity. I wanted to see how he usually acted. I thought the whole purpose of this event was to let us get to know our seniors better. Bummer. Well, there's still the others. Seeing how disappointed his classmates were, Linus shook his head. If only they knew. Oh, it's about to start. Quiet down. As their words fell, the lights dropped. Turning his attention towards the stage, Linus leaned back. His eyes drifted to Julian in the meantime, who seemed to have noticed his gaze and turned his head to meet his gaze. 1. The two stared at each other for a few seconds before Julian turned his head away. Thank you everyone for coming today. The interview then began. The show began on time. The once bustling studio, filled with dozens of staff and involved parties, fell into silence. The expressions of the ones standing backstage changed, and a palpable tension filled the air. Nobody seemed nervous. At least on the outside. I couldn't really tell. The studio lights above flashed, moving around and hovering over every one of the groups present. At the same time, DYRK, the presenter, entered the stage as he stopped in the middle and started reading cue cards. Welcome everyone. I'm your host for today, DYRK Conaway, and I once again welcome you to my show. Without a doubt, he was quite experienced at this, handling the introductions and opening sequence masterfully and smoothly. A lot of jokes were thrown around, making some of the people backstage laugh. Personally, I found a lot of them to be funny and even laughed at a few, but I kept getting weird looks from the people around me when I did so. From the beginning of the interview, it was evident that some of the groups had been trained to handle these types of interviews. They answered politely and even exchanged jokes with the MC. The previous tension seemed to fade at that moment, and what replaced it was a strange silence, as some people seemed satisfied with what was happening. But the same couldn't be said for me. As entertaining as the interview was, it felt a little lacking. It was fun, yes, but to be honest, if I had the option, I'd switch it for some other channel. It just wasn't engaging enough to keep me from switching to another channel. I wasn't the only one that seemed to have noticed the problem, as some of the writers near me frowned. Now, let's start with the second years. This group over here. May you select 2 representatives for this. It doesn't matter who. Just pick whoever you want. Dyrk's voice suddenly attracted my attention as the lights of the studio suddenly dimmed. The girls turned to look at Leon, who sat by the edge of the sofa with an impassive look. Feeling their gazes, he pointed towards 2 people. Oh, so it will be Kira and Aoife? Wait, what? We will play quick-fire questions. While one reads the question, the other has to answer as fast as possible. You have 10 seconds to answer. Dyrk pointed toward the right where a large clock appeared. Every 10 seconds the clock will buzz. Once it buzzes, you will have no choice but to go to the next question, or the clock will continue to buzz until you get back on track. He then turned his attention back toward Kira and Aoife. So then, which one of the 2 will ask the question, and which one will answer? I will ask and Kira will answer. Aoife's reply came quickly as she picked up the set of cards. She started giggling the moment she caught a glimpse of the first question. Just why is it the 2 of them? I couldn't help but glance at Leon, who evaded my gaze. Are you crazy? Let's begin with the rapid questions. Let the clock start. Tick. The handle of the clock began to move and Aoife asked the first question. What's your name? Kira raised her brow as if to say, did you really just ask me that? And Aoife shrugged back as if to say, what? It's what the question is asking. No words were exchanged, and yet, I somehow knew what they were saying. Girls, you have 5 seconds left to answer. Aoife K. Megrail. Aoife's face abruptly changed at the answer, but before she could say anything, she was cut off by Kira, who suddenly smirked. That's my next question. And buzz. What? Buzz. Fine. Frowning, Aoife threw the first card away and began reading the second card. Tell me something funny. Oh oof, there's many. Hurry up. There's not much time. I love beer. I've got a raging addiction to alcohol and I can't live a day without it. Aoife's eyes widened. Why are you, Buzz? Despite wanting to protest and not continue, Aoife could only clench her teeth and read the next question. An embarrassing story about yourself. Oh, this is kind of fun. You, watch yourself. Don. One time I remember going to a shop. I ordered a few drinks. Wait, Kier. When I went to pay, I realized that it wasn't a shop but someone's house. Buzz. If I could describe Aoife's current expression with one word, it'd be terrifying. Something that made you laugh a lot. My face whenever I look in the mirror. Kira covered her face and sighed. It's hard to look at. Aoife's face underwent another series of changes. However, just as she was about to speak again, the buzzer sounded. Buzz. No. I'm not ha. Buzz. Buzz. Fine. Buzz. Buzz. Aoife glared at the clock and extended both arms as if to say, I didn't even speak. Buzz. As I stared at the spectacle that was unfolding right before my very eyes, I couldn't help but glance at my sides where the producers and writers were. It was a sight that left me at a loss for words. Clutching their stomachs, several of them glanced downward, their faces turning red as their shoulders trembled. Even the first years and third years in the audience were having a hard time, as some of them could hardly suppress their laughter. I noticed a few writers exchanging glances, their eyes reflecting a certain gleam, as they directed their attention toward Kira and Aoife. It was as if they were looking at some treasures. Next question, please. Oblivious to what was happening around them, Kira urged Aoife to continue. She seemed to be thoroughly enjoying the situation as she sat up straight and placed both her hands on her thighs. Come, we don't have all day. Shoot. Fire. I'm ready. Take your best shot. You. Quick. Fine. Oh. Finally, a normal question. Aoife's expression finally eased, and a smile graced her lips. Kira frowned at the sight. What would you do if you woke up smart the next day? So, a philosophical question? I sighed in relief when I heard the question. Finally, one that Kira couldn't exploit. That's not possible. Why? My brain isn't capable of doing that. I spoke too soon. Buzz. Wait a sec. Buzz. No. I hate this G. Buzz. Aoife looked around her helplessly, settling her gaze over to Leon, Evelyn, and Teresa with a hopeful look. Sadly, none of them even cared to look back at her as they feigned ignorance. In the end, Aoife's gaze settled on me. Do something. And I suddenly found myself at the center of attention as the cameras turned to point in my direction. For some reason, the clock didn't buzz, meaning that it was being allowed. Great. Help me. Wait, why are you asking me? Tell her to stop. Julian, don't interfere. You should understand exactly why we're doing this. You shut up. Aoife's head flicked my way as she fiercely glared in my direction. You better help me or I'll reveal to everyone your dark secret. My hair stood on end. Wait, Aoife, let's be calm about this. No, I'm not having this. Wait. I pushed my hands down to motion her to calm down. Calm down. We can settle this peacefully. You're not in your right state of mind at the moment. I'm calm. I'm really calm. Never been so calm in my life. I don't know if I can interfere. The rules said I couldn't, so Aoife crossed her arms and sat back. Is that so? Do you really think I won't tell everyone about how you often go to the mirror and randomly laugh at your own jokes? Aoife covered her mouth, but it was a little too late for that. My face suddenly felt hot. Not only were the other groups staring at me, but even the staff beside me were looking at me. PFTT. Evelyn couldn't contain herself any longer and burst into laughter, breaking the silence. Her laughter triggered a chain reaction, causing more people to join in fits of laughter. The only one that didn't laugh was Aoife, who averted her gaze away from me. So like Kira. My voice came out rather flat. Yes? Destroy her. You've got it. The fits of laughter became even louder. If you had to compare me to an animal, what would that be? A rat? Kira suddenly licked her lips, and as if that wasn't enough, she continued. Like a dirty, nasty, hairy RA. That's enough. Aoife abruptly stood up and she threw the cards in the air, forgoing all decorum. I can't take this buzz. And that marks the end of the round. Thank you very much, both of you. Even DYRK struggled to contain his laughter as he stood up to mediate between the two of them. Now, this is all fun and games. There's no need to take this so seriously, and it's not like it's over. He passed a set of cards to Kira. It's now your turn to ask the questions. Both Kira and Aoife blinked, and then Aoife's face blossomed into a smile as she took her seat. Is that so? She twiddled her hair, putting on a nonchalant air. Well, if we must. This chapter is uploaded by Audiobook Novels. Please donate through our PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 457. Sudden Interview. 4. Let's take a short break. DYRK said as he turned his attention away from the recording devices. The other groups moved away from their seats, nearing the break area as they took a break themselves. The same was true for Leon and the others who approached me without looking me in the eye well. All except Leon, who was shaking from head to toe. That bastard. So save it for later. I shut Aoife up before she could speak any further. Gulping down the water, Evelyn suddenly looked around us and nudged with her chin. I think we stood out a little too much. Everyone is staring our way. Don't bother with them. Well, I'm not particularly bothered, but it's not like I can ignore it when they are looking at us like that. If you don't like these types of stares, then next time don't stand out so much. That's not possible. She then pointed at her face and then Aoife's and then Leon's and then Kira's and then mine. Okay, I get the point. But those weren't the stares that I was talking about. I had noticed it midway through the first half of the interview, but as the situation progressed, the gazes at which the audience stared at me seemed to become more and more. Not that I couldn't understand their sentiments. We all came back from the summit showcasing all our skills to the world. The image they had formed about us was probably different than what they were currently seeing. But, well, whatever. They were bound to find out anyway, and it wasn't like Kira's personality wasn't already known. What do you mean by whatever? Evelyn cast me a hesitant glance. I shrugged. Nothing, just keep doing whatever you're doing. They seem to like it, so whatever. Just don't involve me. Their normal behavior was attracting a lot of attention. So long as they didn't cross any lines, which they knew better since Leon had lectured them the entire morning, they could do as they pleased. Well, you should have said so from the start. Energetic, Kira stretched her fingers. Her gaze slowly settled over to Aoife, who visibly frowned at the sight. I've got a little bone to pick with a certain someone. What? Why are you looking at me like that? You know exactly why I'm looking at you like this. No, but I was just doing what you did to me. And that's fine, that's totally fine. You can do that. No problem. Then, still pissed me off. Kira raised her hand and Aoife stepped back behind me. I was instantly surprised and tried to back away. Wait. Hold on. Julian, hold her back. Think about my reputation. I'm supposed to be the princess of this empire. How would people think of me if they see me like this? Fight then? I can't do that. ITLL make me look like a hooligan. Hooligan? Wait, you're talking about me? Kira pointed at herself before frowning. Nah, fuck that. Get slapped. No, go away. Aoife clung to my back, her face next to my hip. I tried to push her away, but she clung to me, like some sort of octopus. Aoife, let go. Everyone's looking. No, what nonsense. If I let go, she'll attack me. You might as well get slapped instead of me. No, why? How does that even make sense? I don't care. We're both in it together. I die, you dehik. You, what are you doing? Like a ghost? Delilah appeared next to Aoife and poked her on the side of her ribs, forcing her to let go with a small shriek. When did she get here? I hadn't even noticed her before she suddenly appeared beside Aoife. In any case, thanks. I thanked her and she returned a nod. Then, with a flat expression that failed to hide the expectation hidden within, she asked, was it good? What was? The chocolate. So it was about that. Her gaze trailed to the side, and she again asked, was it good? Well, should I tell her it was a little too sweet for my taste? In the end, I chose against it and nodded. It was good. With a casual nod, she walked away. As she turned just then, I swore noticed the faintest of smiles spreading across her lips, but it was hard to tell as it disappeared within moments. Was I imagining things? Let's make some changes to the program. Jack Benally said all of a sudden. As the main writer and planner of the show, it was well within his authority to be able to make changes to the show on a whim. Typically, sudden changes would prompt the team and the staff to panic, but that wasn't the case today. Simply put, they all understood the reasoning behind his actions. Those second years. They're quite fun, aren't they? DYRK said as he took a sip of his water bottle. Fun? Just that? Jack let out a small laugh. They were more than that. They were everything that I needed them to be and then some. You're not wrong. They were quite easy to work with even for me. I could see. Unlike the other teams that forced banter, it seemed to come flawlessly with them. Holding no expectations for the second years who they expected to be all serious and indifferent, the two of them were pleasantly surprised with what they witnessed. First, they just wanted to introduce them and ask them about their experiences at the summit and how they felt about it. But things were different now. The girls had captured the attention of everyone in the studio, with their witty and funny answers. Their chemistry was obvious for all to see. DYRK thought the same as he laughed brightly. Ha ha, that group. They probably didn't even mean to be funny. What we saw is what they are. There's no fakeness in them, unlike some of the other groups. Yeah, that's probably it. With a nod, Jack Benally suddenly turned his head to face a certain direction and laughed. No, it isn't probably. It's exactly how they are. Oh, where are you looking at? Curious, DYRK looked at where Jack Benally was looking, and then he caught sight of them. Recognizing Aoife and Kira, he saw them run around Julian, who looked around helplessly. Next to them, Leon was pointing his finger at Julian while silently laughing. Evelyn, on the other hand, was holding her head as though she was feeling a headache. DYRK too let out a small laugh. You know it's genuine when they act like this even without the recording devices on them. MHM. The summit winner isn't too bad. He's got quite the chemistry with the group. Yeah, I also noticed. I previously thought he'd be the most boring, but his reactions are, yeah. Jack Benally caressed his chin as he pondered. Then, casting a glance toward one of the people in charge of recording, he ordered, "Hey, have one of the recording devices directed his way." Excuse me? Make sure you keep the recording device focused on him and record his reactions. Yes, understood. Though flustered by the sudden orders, the cameraman shifted the recording angle and directed it toward Julian. Make sure you keep recording him the entire time. Take in all his reactions. Understood. Good. Do you have something prepared? DYRK curiously asked, glancing at the recording device and the manager in the distance. Jack nodded his head, a smile tugging at his lips. You'll see later. DYRK's eyebrow arched upward. I'm starting to grow curious now. At the same time, in the third-year break room, the second years seemed to have all the attention. A cadet with short brown hair and blue eyes said. He was rather tall and he had a large build that towered over everyone in the room. His current attention was focused on the young girl sitting by the sofa. Although she looked harmless at first glance, none of the third years dared to look at her in the eye. Yeah. Elizabeth glanced up a little and nodded. That's true. Are you fine with that? Why wouldn't I be? No, it's... Elizabeth raised her hand to stop the cadet from speaking. There are juniors, and they're quite talented. While it's true that we might lose a chance to stand out, it doesn't really matter. This broadcast won't have many views, so it doesn't matter anyway. Popularity was important for people belonging to guilds. With all the third years belonging to a guild, they needed to take care of their own popularity. Popularity was what helped them get better deals with the guilds and sponsors. This was a lot. Of money. Money that they couldn't do without. After all, resources were important. That's true. Upon hearing Elizabeth's words, many of the third years relaxed. Seeing this, a faint smile spread across Elizabeth's lips as she continued. Think about it as a small loss for our small juniors. If you manage to recruit one of them into your guild, who knows what might happen. With a soft laugh, Elizabeth took her attention away from the first years. It was there that her smile slowly started to fade and her expression turned serious. Recalling the woman with soft black hair and obsidian eyes, her eyes narrowed. Who is she? She hadn't felt so threatened by someone in a very long time. Slowly lowering her head, Elizabeth glanced at her wrist. A faint glow manifested shortly after as she pressed on the 4-clover leaf that appeared. As she pressed on the leaf, she started to speak in her mind. I need someone investigated. The break lasted no more than 15 minutes before the program started again. But there was an evident change in the program compared to the first half. Unlike before, where the spotlight was on all the groups, it now leaned more towards the second years. They didn't even try to hide it as they blatantly kept their focus on them. The focus was now directed toward Teresa as DYRK started asking her questions. Teresa, you just turned 8, is that correct? No. Teresa shook her head, her large eyes blinking slowly. No? Then how old are you? Teresa's delicate brows furrowed for a brief moment before she looked down on her fingers and started counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. By the time she got to 5, her eyes started to spin. She's 8. Aoife answered in her stead. Oh, I see. DYRK nodded, a little confused. Nonetheless, he continued. Then, Teresa, you're quite young. Considering how you're not yet a student, how do you find life at the academy? I flinched at the question, and so did Leon and the others. About that, can we change the question? Aoife suddenly interjected. Evelyn hurriedly nodded her head beside her, casting a wary glance in my direction. I waved my hand at the girls and placed both hands on my throat to signal them to change the topic quickly. Shift the focus away. Quickly. Yes. Let's change the question. Teresa is quite shy, so it's best if we don't involve her. Their odd reactions were taken in by DYRK, who seemed even more eager. Teresa, you don't have to worry. Talk. No. It's Finn. No freedom. No human right. Smack. My forehead stung as I smacked it. I knew this was going to happen. Leon had told me that he had managed to bribe Teresa, promising to grant her access to Justice Man if she behaved today. However, it seemed the deep-seated resentment she harbored was too big. Worried that her words may have caused some misunderstanding, I glanced at DYRK, but the moment it did, my worries subsided as his lips curled upward in amusement. The same went for the writer and audience around us. Oh, no freedom? No human right? What happened? If you have anything that you want to. Ha ha ha, she was joking. Joking. Evelyn hurriedly covered Teresa's mouth as she struggled in her grasp. In the end, all it took was a single bite from her to force Evelyn to let go. With a frown covering her delicate features, Teresa crossed her arms while arrogantly looking around her. They took away my freedom, my rights, my beliefs, my identity. Someone stop her. We're trying. Not good enough. I conversed with the girls using hand signals, but none of them managed to stop Teresa, who continued her rant. Made me sell my soul to the devil. In the end, we all just gave up. Is that true? No. Aoife shook her head. All we did was take her show rights because she spent too much time watching Justice Man. She now sees all of us as some sort of supervillains. PFT. Unusual sounds echoed from the audience area as some of the cameramen struggled to stifle their laughter. Ho? Is that so? Even DYRK was struggling to keep his face composed as his gaze hovered over Teresa, who shook her head. No, they lie. Teresa. This is why I said having Teresa on was a bad idea. I glanced at Delilah, who looked at the spectacle with an indifferent expression. With how indifferent she looked, I couldn't quite tell what she was thinking. I'm sure things are rough for you, Teresa. You have our sympathies. Nod. I accept. Well, let's move on to the next group. Stifling his laugh once more, DYRK flipped his card over and finally directed his attention toward another group. He started asking them questions to which they responded rather well and professionally. Then, he shifted toward another group and asked them different questions before eventually returning to the girls. Ho ho, we're finally back with you. He flipped one of the cards away, at which point his hand paused. The corner of his lips curled, and I suddenly felt an ominous premonition. If you had to describe Julian, the current summit winner, with one word, how would you describe him? The studio went quiet all of a sudden and I felt multiple gazes directed my way. Wait, hold on. What? Why was I suddenly involved in all of this? Did I hear correctly? As Kira's voice fell, I heard a certain trembling in her voice. It almost seemed like she was excited. No, not just here. Leon's eyes were sharp, and his back was straight. Never before did I see him so attentive. I turned to look at them, and pointed at them in warning, don't do anything funny. But my warning seemed to have fallen on deaf ears as smiles bloomed on each of their faces. Even Delilah seemed to enjoy this as I felt her gaze from the left. Tyrant. Teresa started. Oh, that's a good one. Evelyn nodded beside her. No, since it's used, it'll go for psychopath? Not a bad choice. Since I can't swear, it'll go for rat. What? I rigidly turned my head to meet Aoife's gaze. Pressing her hands together, she mouthed, sorry, but I'm just going to play along. No, don't. Demon. I give up. The girls had already made their minds up to play along with Teresa's antics. There was no point in threatening them. I thought it was going to end with all the girls calling me a demon in one form or another, but things took an unexpected turn when it became Leon's turn. All of a sudden, it turned quiet and I raised my head. I met his gaze and he nodded at me. Were you? Opening his mouth, words flew out of Leon's mouth at the speed at which a machine gun shot. It was so fast that I felt my world spin. Buffoon. Clown. Delusional. Cow. Exploiter. Corrupt. Two-faced. Ugly. Arrogant. Pretentious. Spinless. Obnoxious. Ungrateful. 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 This chapter is uploaded by Audiobook Novels. Please donate through our PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 458. Sudden Interview. 5. The entire audience was silent, staring at Leon with widened eyes. I too looked at him with stupefied eyes. Just ungrateful. Leon, stop it. Aoife said all of a sudden. I know you've been exploited by Julian, but the task was to say one word. You're way over the word limit. Oh. Leon bit his lips, looking all sad. What the fuck? I get it. I'm sorry. It's nothing. We all get you. Kira waved her hand dismissively. She seemed to understand him. It doesn't look like you have a single person supporting you. How do you feel, Julian? Suddenly directed a question. I was a bit taken aback, but I quickly recomposed myself before answering. Honestly, I'm not surprised. They've never quite liked me from the start. No, wait. Feeling a little bad. Aoife waved her hand. The others followed right after. We were joking. Yeah. Right. We were, right? What's with the hesitation? Is that so? I looked at Teresa, who flicked her head away from me. Her reaction seems to say otherwise. Yeah, but her situation is a bit different. She hates everyone, so you aren't being left out on that one. That's true. I nodded after contemplating Aoife's words. She wasn't wrong. Currently, Teresa hated all of us. Not that I was worried. She was probably going to get over her phase within the next couple of days or so. Or at least I hoped it would be the case. You guys seem to have quite the chemistry, Duarque said after alternating his gaze between me and the girls. He seemed to be studying us with keen interest. How long have you known each other? For you to have such chemistry with them, you must have worked with them for quite a long time. About that, how should I answer this? I didn't know what he was talking about. Chemistry? What chemistry? They were all bashing me. I was about to answer the question when Aoife beat me to it. A year technically, but considering how he tends to disappear whenever he wants, we've probably known him for about a month. The entire studio fell silent at her words, with the gazes of the people around us becoming even more apparent. Not that I could blame them. I too would have been surprised if I were in their position. Known him for about a month? Yeah. Aoife nodded, crossing her arms and sinking deep into the sofa. There was a time when he disappeared for an entire half a year. That was right before the summit too. Why is that? Well, I don't know. He never tells us why he disappears and we don't really ask. As Aoife continued speaking, I felt the gazes of those around me change. From surprise to what felt like pity. Yes, pity. When I turned to see where those stares came from, I was surprised to see that they came from the other cadets. It suddenly clicked then. Do they think I have some sort of chronic illness? No, I'm not sick. I just have things to do. Wow. Duarque directed his gaze toward me. I hope you get better. Wait, I'm not. Ish. I understand. You might not want to talk about this. They'll switch the topic for you. With an exasperated look, Dyrk switched the topic. You may not realize it now, but I'm sure you'll get an earful from our viewers when this episode comes out. For now, let's switch to the last and final segment. The lights around us dimmed, and a recording device was wheeled in. Our daily lives. The recording device came alive. For the last segment, we will now display short clips of the groups here and their daily lives. We asked each group a few days ago to send whatever they had, and this is the accumulation of the clips that we have been sent. Hold on. I blinked, struggling to understand his words. This was the second time this had been mentioned to me, and it was also the second time that I struggled to understand what was happening. Clips? What clips? Why was I totally clueless about this? Who should we start with first? How about the first years? This looks entertaining. A video started playing on the television all of a sudden. On it were the members of the first years. They were a male group composed of 4 young men. They were all handsome, and in the clip, they showed several funny clips of what they did in their daily lives, and a little bit of banter here and there. I wasn't gonna lie and say it was boring. It was fun. Very fun. Unlike before, I actually felt that this segment was extremely interesting. Yet, for some reason, I couldn't enjoy it. My mind kept wondering about the clips, and what our clips were going to be about. Leon had most likely taken it upon himself to do the clips considering how the others didn't look like the type to be interested in doing these things. It made sense, but the thought scared me. Just what exactly was he going to show? Time seemed to pass both fast and slow as clips after clips were shown. The backstage atmosphere had markedly shifted from its earlier gloomy and tense state to a more pleasant one. And then it came. Our clip. The second clip is up next. Let's see what we have. I'm rather curious. He wasn't the only one that seemed keen on watching the video. The people in the audience, and even some of the other teams seemed to look forward to the clip. I was too, but at the same time I felt very apprehensive. Click. The video started. Check. Check. Is the video working? Check. The first one to appear in the video was Evelyn, who extended her hands to touch the camera. But she was promptly slapped away by another hand as Leon's voice echoed through the speakers. As expected, Leon was the one in charge of this. Evelyn, don't touch the recording. It's working. I'm recording. Oh, is that so? Licking her lips, Evelyn took a step back and twirled her hair. Then, casting a quick glance at the camera, she shyly waved. Hey, what are you doing? I'm kind of shy. I didn't expect there to be so many people watching. There's only me watching. Evelyn rolled her eyes. Play along, will you? I don't have time to play along. We only have a couple of minutes to shoot this video. The camera shifted away from Evelyn. Hey, wait, let's redo it. No, get away from me. Vice Director. Leon's refusal and the obvious tussling that was happening behind the camera caused some of the people around to laugh. The heavy pants of both Evelyn and Leon echoed through the speakers as they continued to tussle against one another. Leon, let me. I said no. The camera ended up resting on a nearby counter which was directed toward the far end of the common, near the corridor leading up to the dorm room, as Evelyn and Leon started fighting in the background. And if one looked closely, they'd spot a small figure hiding behind the very wall the camera was pointed to. Just what is she doing? Hey, what's with all the noise? Can you keep it down? Clank. Kira rushed down the stairs with a frown. Twirling her pinky in her ear, she scowled and glared in the direction of Evelyn and Leon while briefly glancing at the recording device. It's 3 in the afternoon, and I'm trying to sleep, so keep it D. Boo. Moat. F me. The video bleeped continuously as Kira jumped up in the air and shouted. Where did this gremlin-looking midget come from? Wait, hold on? Laughter rippled through the room as all eyes turned toward Kira, who sank into the sofa in an attempt to hide her face. On the other hand, a small smile graced Teresa's lips as she arrogantly looked around and nudged her head whenever someone met her gaze. You saw that, didn't you? That was me, was what she was trying to imply with her gaze. This was all caught by the recording devices around. The clip continued. Kira, you know better than to swear in front of a child? Aoife was the next one to come out of her room as she started to berate Kira, who was clenching her heart. What? I almost died from a heart attack. Have some damn sympathy for your classmates. Oh please. As if you're going to die from something as little as that. You've been up against scarier opponents. Like what? Like Julian whenever he tells a joke. With a look of sudden realization, Kira casually nodded her head and returned to her usual nonchalant look. If you put it that way, then you're right. Hold on a second. That's that. Having dealt with the situation, Aoife seemed to be pleased with herself and turned to head back into her room when all of a sudden she jumped up in the air. Moat. F me. The video once again bleeped as Aoife started throwing curses. When did you get here? Her anger was directed toward Delilah, who had appeared behind her out of nowhere. Chocolate bar in her hand. Nonchalantly eating one, she tilted her head. I've always been here. Why? No, you scared me. Oh. With a nod, Delilah returned her attention back to the chocolate. I stared at the scene with wide eyes. What in the hell is she doing there? Turning my head, My eyes met with Delilah's. Strangely, her face was a little red. Hold on a second. Wait a second. Hold up. Pause. Massaging her forehead, Kira looked at Aoife. Are you just going to ignore what just happened? Let's set aside the fact that you completely copied every word that I said. But should I remind you of the words you literally said to me a couple of seconds ago? No, that's... Kira started to directly quote Aoife's words. Kira, you know better than to swear in front of a child? Oh please. As if you're going to die from something as little as that. You've been up against scarier opponents. It was now Aoife's turn to sink into the sofa as her gaze wandered away from the projection. The laughter continued to spread in the studio. Hume. Aoife turned her head away from Kira. You've got no proof of any of that happening. No, I actually do. Kira's eyes briefly shifted toward the recording device that rested on the counter. Ah! Aoife blinked, and it was then that she suddenly noticed the camera that was pointed at them. Her face instantly flushed red and she dashed toward it. Hell no. Two arms desperately clung to Aoife's leg as she made a dash for the camera. Kira, let go. I'm telling you as the group's leader. You better let go or this won't well end. For you. Do your best. And so, another fight broke out. Let go you bit. Over my dead body. In the span of a couple of minutes, two fights had broken out and one could still hear the muffled sound of Evelyn and Leon fighting at the back. Leon? No means no. To make matters worse, Delilah and Teresa watched the spectacle with interest from the back as Delilah slowly ate her candy. From time to time, the other cadets would come down to watch what was happening before fleeing the scene. It was a mess. Terrible mess. Click. The clip ended shortly after that. A brief silence hung in the studio as everyone's attention was on the girls who had practically sunk into the deepest pits of the sofa with the exception of Teresa. Then, a lot of people broke into smiles and light laughter as the girls sank even deeper into the sofa. Staring at the scene, I didn't have it in me to laugh. I was at a loss for words. I really didn't know what to say. Damn it. I was gone for just a few days and this was the end result? What sort of situation was this? No, never mind. I should be glad I was gone. If not, I would have been implicated. I sighed in relief when my thoughts paused there. Tring. Then, I felt my communication device vibrate in my pocket, and I excused myself for a moment. So, is everything done? How's the situation? It was Leon. Leon? Wasn't he? How are you talking to me? I recorded the message beforehand. Huh? Why would you? I thought you might not like clip. The clip was fine. It didn't implicate me anyway. Not sure he would think I would not like it. I mean the second clip. Second one? My mouth suddenly paused. There was another one, and then I turned around to see my face displayed on the screen of the recording device. Before I knew it, a curse escaped my lips. Oh fuck. This chapter is uploaded by Audiobook Novels. Please donate through our PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 459. Sudden Interview, 6. There was no word I could use to describe my current mood. The studio was wrapping up with the staff moving the chairs and equipment around the set. They'd glance my way, giving the occasional nod whenever they passed me. Letting out a breath, I could see my own soul slipping out of my breath. Putting on the friendliest expression I could muster, I walked up to the writer. About the last clip. Do you want me to delete it? The writer asked with a faint smile on his face. I raised my brow. Could I really get it deleted? If possible, that'd be pretty helpful. Sadly, I'm a mere writer. I'm not very helpful. I clicked my tongue. At least don't get my hopes up. Although I already knew it wasn't possible, a small part of me held on to the slight hope that it might just happen. But yeah, who was I to hope? Don't worry. The writer patted me on the shoulder. The clip was funny. You don't have to worry about the audience turning on you. As embarrassing as it was for you, it made for great entertainment. Even the other teams couldn't help but laugh at it. With another pat on my shoulder and a few more words of encouragement, he left directly, leaving me standing all alone on the set. It wasn't until a few seconds after that Leon and the others approached me. 11:11. There was a strange silence between us. A strange silence that I broke. I thought I wasn't going to be involved in all of this. The silence continued. Looking down at my hands, I clenched them tightly. For some reason, Teresa hid behind Evelyn, who stepped behind Aoife, who hid behind Kira, who flinched while mumbling. The fuck? Are you using me as a meat shield? While also hiding behind Leon. I nodded silently. Yeah, this is how it should be. I turned to look at them, Leon specifically. Immediately, they all flinched. Stay back. Leon extended one hand forward while the other was raised defensively as if shielding his family from harm. It was a funny sight, but didn't you call me a tyrant? A dictator? Shake. Shake. They all shook their heads, but all it did was make me laugh. You did. Let's talk about this. Leon tried his best to mediate between us, but it was useless. I wasn't in the mood to listen, at least at first. But soon enough, I stopped. That was because I noticed the girls look at one another before eventually settling their gazes on Leon, who had his back turned against him. Although I couldn't quite tell what they were whispering to one another, I could tell what they were thinking. They're planning on sacrificing Leon? My expression turned odd. I would have done the same had I been in their position. How ruthless. Julian, I know you're angry about the clip, but if you think about it, it's not too bad. Shifting my attention towards Leon, who was still trying his best to mediate between us, I shifted my attention towards the girls. Ha! With a sigh, I waved my hand. Go. Their eyes lit up immediately, and without saying anything else, they all dashed away from Leon, who was still oblivious to the situation. If anything, the clip only improved your reputation. Now nobody thinks that you, Of course, he did eventually realize. But by then, it was already too late. They were all far gone. That, Leon's face paled, and I shook my head, placing my hand over his shoulder. At this point, even I feel bad for you. At the same time, I quietly mumbled sadness. Did you get that? DYRK spoke while glancing toward the backstage area. He had caught a glimpse of another amusing scene, causing his eyes to glimmer with delight. The more he looked at them, the more they felt like a treasure trove to him. They were brilliant. He could already imagine the audience's reaction upon the episode's airing. His entire body trembled with excitement. Yes, this is what I was looking for. He originally didn't have much hope for the program, but this was beyond anything he had expected. Make sure to send the clip to the editors later. Try to edit as fast as possible and make no mistake. I want this program to episode in 2 days' time. Yes, 2 days. This was how long it would take for the program to be aired. While he didn't know how well it would do with everything he had witnessed, he was confident he'd at least get more than 2%. Yes, 2%. All I ask for is 2%. Anything more than that and he'd be over the moon. But that was unlikely. Anything above 2% was only something big budget plays, tournaments, or interviews would receive. But interviews? Unlikely. 2%. Linus walked out of the audience with a dazed look on his face. He was so out of it that he looked like a walking corpse. However, in spite of his current state, nobody really said a thing. His current demeanor wasn't a scene the cadets weren't used to. After all, this was usually how most people looked like when finishing an exam. The only problem was that they hadn't finished an exam. In fact, most of the cadets were talking with one another with a certain excitement in their eyes. Linus' behavior naturally attracted the attention of the few cadets near him. Linus? Are you okay? But in spite of their best attempts at talking to him, all he managed were half grunts and nods. Seeing this, the cadets around him eventually left him alone. He was clearly out of it for some reason. And that was true. His brain was far from functional. All he could think of was the interview. He could hardly make out what he had seen. Is that really my brother? Linus couldn't believe it, especially the last clip that they showed. It made everyone roar with laughter, from the production staff to the audience. Nobody could stop laughing. Even Linus almost felt the urge to laugh. The clip was that funny. It was just that his disbelief managed to suppress the laughter that was about to come out. The man on the screen seemed so different than the Julian that he knew. So much so that it almost felt like they were two completely different people. But he had seen Julian firsthand. He knew that he was the same. And yet, the brother that I know would have never behaved like that even if it's fake. His pride and ego wouldn't allow him to do that. Linus knew all too well. But could it be possible that he managed to pull away from his ego? That was the only explanation Linus could think of. Still, lost in thought, Linus wasn't paying attention to where he was walking and accidentally bumped into something hard. Also, he was just about to apologize when he lost his words. Raising his head, his gaze landed on a man with long silver hair neatly combed to the side. The man stood slightly taller than him, exuding a calm demeanor. As their eyes met, the first, "You're Black Star Jacob R." Stein narrowed his own in response. Linus swallowed whatever words he had to say and simply lowered his head. TSK. What he heard after was a clear tongue click. "Watch where you're going." Jacob's voice was soft, yet Linus felt an invisible pressure emanating from him. The sensation was vaguely reminiscent of his brother's presence, prompting Linus to click his tongue in irritation. "Do you have a problem?" Overhearing Jacob's words, Linus raised his head and shook his head. No, he wanted to end things there and was just about to walk away when a hand pressed against his shoulder. "No, you certainly have a problem with me." Linus licked his lips and took a deep breath to calm himself down. He was quite good at this. With a softening of his features, he lowered his head and tried to apologize. "But I'm sore. Slap. Linus' eyes widened as his head flicked to the right. Did he just? Feeling the sting on his face, Linus didn't know how to react. The slap had been so fast that he hardly had any time to react. But he was also in shock. What suddenly brought the slap? As Linus prepared to react, he suddenly noticed something. He isn't looking at me, Jacob. He was looking elsewhere. Where? Where exactly was he? Turning his head, Linus saw him. Julian stood not far away, watching them with a blank, unreadable expression. Him just standing there attracted a lot of stares, and it was also then that Linus understood the reason for Jacob's actions. So he wants Julian. Linus found himself clenching his fists tightly. In the end, he was being used as a punching bag in order to get Julian's attention. While Linus wasn't exactly strong, he wasn't dumb. He could see through everything that was happening. He also understood Jacob's nature all too well. He was arrogant, and naturally so. His talent was amongst the top within the first years. There was no one within the year that could properly challenge him. He always looked to challenge the strong in order to prove his strength. And seeing how talented Julian was, it was obvious that his target was Julian. Jacob wanted to challenge Julian. But that was stupid. While Jacob was strong, Julian was older. As a result, his tier was higher. If the two were to fight, Julian would wipe the floor with him. That was unless. Are you just going to watch? Jacob's voice snapped Linus out of it. When he raised his head, he saw Jacob directly address the calm and collected Julian. Standing where he was, he didn't show much of a reaction to Jacob's words. This prompted Jacob to frown. Are you fine with what I did to your brother? Yet again, Julian remained quiet. He seemed to be totally ignoring Jacob. Eventually, however, he turned his head and looked directly at Linus. The two made eye contact, and Julian's lips parted open. Are you fine with what he did to you? This chapter is uploaded by Audiobook Novels. Please donate through our PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 460. Dark Silhouette 1. Linus blinked his eyes, unable to open his mouth. Overhearing his brother's question, he didn't know how to reply. How did he feel? Of course, the answer was simple. He felt like shit. How would anyone feel about getting slapped to get their brother's attention? So, as Julian asked again, Linus felt Jacob's gaze. Linus suddenly felt pressured. However, seeing his brother's stern gaze, something within Linus broke and he opened his mouth. Like shit. Is that what you want me to say? He started to speak truthfully. Why would I like it when I'm being used to get your attention? Turning his head, Linus glared in Jacob's direction. As Linus' expression twisted, he pressed his finger against Jacob's chest. I'll just say it now so things are clear. My brother gives no fucks about me. Whatever you do to me, it'll only make him happy. If you want to challenge him, how about you say it directly? The words flew out effortlessly from Linus' mouth. Though Linus wasn't paying close attention, he vaguely felt Julian's lips curl at the edges. He almost seemed proud. But how could it be? He had to be imagining things. Pressing his finger harder, Linus' eyes narrowed. Are you that scared of asking him to fight with you? Why do you need to go about it in such a roundabout way? You've said enough. Linus felt Jacob's hand clamp around his wrist, the grip so firm that he struggled to free himself. While Jacob's expression was calm, Linus could tell from the tone of his voice that he was currently angry. You're right, I should have just been more direct. Jacob's grip over Linus' wrist tightened. It was strong enough to make Linus flinch. Still, are you sure your brother won't do anything if I do something to you? Raising his head, Linus looked at Jacob and swallowed his words. He had a sudden bad feeling wash over him. However, by the time it happened, it was too late. Bang! A fist came flying for his face. Linus heard a faint cracking sound as the fist descended, forcing his head back. An intense pain washed over his mind at that moment, forcing his vision to go white. By the time he recovered his vision, he felt that the world had turned upside down. Moving his head, he could see his brother looking down on him from the distance. He was staring at him without an expression while a shadow cast over his body shortly after. Mounting Linus' body, Jacob raised his fist while looking at Julian. Are you really not going to do anything? No response. Jacob nodded, and his fist came smashing down. Bang. Linus felt his head recoil to the right. Nothing. Bang. And then to the left. Linus felt his mind grow blank from the impact. Really? Are you just going to stand there and watch as I keep going? A cold voice rained down, and Linus felt his body grow cold. Jacob also appeared stunned as his movements slowed down. However, recovering rather quickly, he clenched his fist tightly and punched down once more. Bang. Linus heard another crack, and his expression twisted. He wanted to fight back, But how could he? The difference in strength between him and Jacob was massive. He could only silently endure the beating that seemed to go on forever. Bang, bang. The pain had already dug its way deep into his mind, and it seemed to never end. Linus wanted it to stop, but it never did. Not until, what is going on here? He heard a faint sound in the distance. It seemed to belong to one of the professors as he heard the sound of rushed footsteps. It was only then that the pain stopped. No, it was still there. It just stopped hurting as much. Everything else from that point felt like a blur. All except a familiar voice. Remember this pain. It was Julian's voice. Within the darkness that clouded Linus' vision, his words dug deeply into his mind. They were words Linus would never forget. Because it's only going to get worse from this point forward. Because things truly did get worse from that point forward. The time it took for a professor to come after Linus started to get beat up was about 1.5 minutes. Their response was rather fast. Seeing that there were quite a lot of witnesses, it took them no time to apprehend the one responsible for beating up Linus and take him away. He was probably going to be put into detention for a few weeks. Looking down at Linus' body and seeing his beat-up state, I pursed my lips. Why didn't you do anything? Even as Leon spoke, I kept my gaze on Linus' body. I wanted to ask the same thing to you. What do you mean? You think I couldn't tell you were here? I know you were watching just like I was. Leon's silence spoke volumes. I shook my head while maintaining my gaze on Linus. I thought back to the whole event and sighed. He's immature. You're right, Leon said, lowering his head slightly. He's smart. Probably smarter than you and on the same level as the family head. But his emotions tie him down. Yeah. There was no denying that Linus was smart. He was able to rank first in the theoretical exam and achieve the top votes in anything that involved theory. However, the same couldn't be said for his practical examinations. He wasn't weak, but he was not strong. He was okay. However, if anybody asked me who I was more scared of in a fight between Linus and Jacob, then I'd answer Linus in a heartbeat. Perhaps not the current Linus. However, a future version that was capable of controlling his emotions. In a sense, I had a feeling he could become someone like the household head Aldrich Ivinus. Just thinking of that man sent shivers down my spine. Linus was definitely capable of becoming someone like that. It was just that he was still far too immature. He let his emotions drive his judgment, which in turn made him act out of place. I think this will probably help him mature a bit. But is it enough? Feeling Leon's gaze, I shook my head. Of course not. Then, I shrugged. Even though I'm not his actual brother, I'm still technically his brother. I can't just sit here, while doing nothing. Cut the crap. Suddenly being interrupted by Leon, I blinked my eyes in confusion. Then, as if reading my true thoughts, Leon spoke. You're only helping him because you want him to become famous. What? Taking aback, my head flicked in his direction. What are you? If he becomes famous, then nobody will pay attention to us and that stupid nickname will vanish. Isn't that right? How did he know? You. Leon shook his head, almost as if he was disappointed. I didn't expect something so brilliant from you. Pressing his hand against my shoulder, Leon looked at me seriously. If you need anything, tell me. I'll do my best to help you. Night, a few hours after the interview. The events that unfolded between Julian, the keeper, and the Pope were kept confidential by the Academy. In order to not spread panic, it was decided that all information would be sealed from outside knowledge. There were, however, a few exceptions. The keeper killed the Pope and tried to insert a soul inside of Julian's body. Aoife's face turned strange upon reading the report within the confines of her room. Following the strange events that had happened over the past few days, Aoife had asked in advance for the report on the situation. Yes, she was curious. But more than anything, this was also part of her job. She couldn't just pretend like nothing had happened. How could she just pretend to not have seen what she had seen and ignored Julian's disappearance over the last few days? This was also part of her responsibilities as a princess. What the hell? However, the more she read the report, the more her face changed. This makes no sense. Aoife's eyes narrowed upon pausing on a certain section. A pope just died, and the Church of Heraclius is doing nothing? No, not only that, but one of the keepers even tried to insert a soul into Julian's body? The more Aoife read the report, the more incredulous her expression became. The series of events were logical in how they were described. The keeper killed the pope and tried to plant a soul into Julian's body in order to frame him. This was logical when taking into account the Pope's strength. However, Aoife knew this was bullshit, because Julian was possessed even before meeting the Keeper. What did this mean? The Keeper never killed the Pope. He was innocent, and yet, He was framed. By who? Who could have done that? Aoife bit her lips. She already knew the answer, but at the same time found it difficult to comprehend it. After all, there was no way Julian could kill the Pope. Absolutely no way. And yet, Aoife's hold over the transcript tightened, and just as her hands started to tremble, her surroundings changed. Eh? Blinking her eyes, Aoife raised her head and looked around. What age? Her words came to a stop as she looked around. A dark silhouette stood before her. She felt his features were vaguely familiar, but at the same time unfamiliar. His back was against hers, and he held onto a sword. Aoife felt incapable of moving. She was stuck, glued to the ground. She couldn't even open her mouth. All she felt was a strange heat that seemed to come from her surroundings. Crackle. That was when she realized it. Flames engulfed her surroundings. What? Stunned, Aoife looked around, only to pause upon hearing a voice she was all too familiar with. I should have known. That was when she finally saw it. Lying right beneath the dark silhouette was a figure she had known since young. With blood leaking out of his mouth, and his body lying in a rubble, he looked up with a half-smile. The all-too-familiar smile appeared on his pale face as he looked up, towards the dark figure. He was her brother. This chapter is uploaded by Audiobook Novels. Please donate through our PayPal to help me keep uploading for you guys. Chapter 461. Dark Silhouette 2. The sight made Aoife's chest drop. What's going on? Was this some sort of dream? Felt like it, and yet, it all felt so real. How could this be? Staring at her brother who was lying beneath the dark silhouette, Aoife wanted to reach forward to tell them to stop. However, she couldn't move at all. All she could do was listen. Listen to her brother's soft and frail voice. You're a lot stronger than I thought. Were you hiding your strength? A sense of despair washed over Aoife as she watched the scene. The sense of despair didn't come directly from her but from somewhere else. Aoife couldn't quite explain where it came from, but it almost felt as though she was being instilled that sense of despair. From who? As a strange silence descended on the surroundings, the dark silhouette raised his hand in the air, revealing a sharp sword. The sword had intricate patterns to it that Aoife had never seen before, gleaming under the flames that surrounded them. No, wait. Aoife felt her chest tremble uncontrollably upon seeing the sight in front of her. She wanted to scream, shout, stop, don't. But the words just refused to leave her mouth. And then, shying, the sword fell down and blood filled the air. Aoife's world froze right then and there. Her entire body started to tremble, and before she knew it, the surroundings changed back to the one she was previously in. The sound of crumpling paper snapped her out of it. When Aoife looked down, she realized the report in her hand had been crushed into a tight ball. Her breathing was rough, and sweat poured down from the side of her face. Flashes and glimpses of the vision continued to replay in her mind as her chest squeezed tightly. Opening her mouth, she found herself able to speak again. What in the world was that? Pain. All Linus felt upon waking up was pain. Upon opening his eyes, what greeted him was a dark room. He could hardly make out the ceiling around him, and although he tried to sit up, he found his body refused to listen to him. Where am I? Blinking his eyes, he tilted his head to get a better look. It was there that his surroundings became clear to him. Isn't this? Oh, you're awake. Click. Linus squinted his eyes as the lights turned on. Turning his head slightly, Linus managed to catch a glimpse of the figure that had entered the room. Although Linus had only seen him once, he recognized him immediately. Doctor? Yes. The doctor waved his hand dismissively, shook his head, and grabbed a clipboard. Retrieving a pen from his breast pocket, he began jotting something down. From his demeanor, he looked less than pleased. Does it run in your family? Excuse me? Confused, Linus tilted his head. Run in the family? What does? Does he have some kind of genetic disease? No, yeah, it must be. Shaking his head, the doctor sighed and wrote something down on the clipboard. Linus could only stare at the doctor with visible confusion on his face. Putting the clipboard down, the doctor looked straight at Linus. Despite this academy having a lot of cadets who fight every day, I don't actually get very many patients. Although Linus didn't know where the conversation was going, he still decided to nod. Usually, most of my days are free. This is why I like my job. I get paid quite a lot of money for doing nothing. Sounded like a dream job. But why was he? That was until he came here. A hateful look flashed across the doctor's face. It was enough to make Linus flinch. What in the world was happening? Ever since he came, I've been busier than ever. With a visible clench of his teeth, the doctor looked at Linus. And now? Not even a couple of months since the start of the new year and his brother is here? Is this some sort of joke? A laugh escaped the doctor's mouth. It was a vicious laugh that made the hair on Linus' body rise. Do I look like a joke to you? No. Linus hurriedly shook his head. Am not? The doctor smiled. Then stop getting yourself injured. Bang. The doctor slapped the clipboard down. In particular, that brother of yours. I swear to God he's going to get himself killed one of these days. Do you have any idea how often he comes here? No. Linus shook his head. This was news for him. Too many times for me to count. The doctor held onto his hair. This place has practically become his second home, and just a few hours ago he came to drop this. The doctor rummaged through his pocket before retrieving a small letter which he tossed in Linus' direction. I wouldn't normally be mad about this, but the fact that the nurses and the staff didn't even bother to check his identity before letting him in is what is bothering me. You need to tell your brother to stop getting injured. No, in fact, you need to stop getting injured as well. You two are going to eat away at all our budget. Spit flew all over Linus' face as the doctor continued to rant. The poor Linus could only quietly nod his head while his entire body was in pain. He wanted to cry, but nothing came out. Thankfully, the rant didn't last for very long. It was over after several minutes. After which, the doctor tossed him the letter and grumbled his way out of the room. When silence finally returned to the room, Linus felt his mind relax. By this point, he didn't even feel the pain from before. His head hurt more than the physical pain he felt, and turning his head, his eyes paused on the letter that his brother had left. Why did he leave me a letter? Curious, Linus reached out for it and opened it. The letter was short, but the contents within were enough to make Linus' expression stiffen. Next week, training grounds. Meet me there at 5 a.m. I will come to find you if you're not there. Flipping the letter to make sure he was seeing it correctly, Linus' face fell. What in the? 2 days later, Saturday. Trying. Turning off the alarm and checking the time. 8 a.m. I felt like a new man. The morning air felt fresher, and even my apartment didn't seem as gloomy as it usually did. No, I more than embraced the gloom. It was a nice change of pace. There was just something fundamentally different about today than any other day. Who would have thought I'd long for such a day? It was the weekend. This meant that I didn't have any classes or anything to do. I continued to lay in bed for the next 10 minutes. I tried getting more sleep, but my mind refused to go back to sleep. I guess I'm now too used to waking up early. Not that it was a problem. Sitting up, I went to the training grounds to train. They were strangely empty today, but I didn't think too much and exercised until I couldn't. By then, I went back to my apartment and took a shower, which I soon followed up with a good breakfast. It was all good, but I'm bored. I blankly stared at the ceiling of my room. No matter how much I thought about it, I really had nothing else to do. Before this, my life had all been about training and troubles. But now that there were no missions and I had already trained, I realized that I didn't have anything else to do. Just what in the? No, things can't go on like this. At this rate, I was probably going to waste my only day off. But what could I do? It was then that it hit me. I should leave the academy and go relax in Lens. Lens was the nearest city to the academy and the closest place I could go to get some fresh air. Once the idea settled in my mind, I was quick to the action. Putting on a jacket, I sneaked out of the dorms and took the first train to Lens. The trip was merely a few hours, and by the time I arrived in Lens, the city was already bustling with activities. Low-tiered pill. Anybody interested in buying a pill? Green ranked manual. Buy a green ranked manual here. Buy one get one free. The area outside the station was bustling with activity, with stalls lined up on both sides of the street. It was clear that I had arrived on a day when a pop-up market was in full swing. There were a lot of things being offered, but none of them quite tempted me. I walked around for half an hour before entering a nearby pub. Compared to the outside, it was not as loud, but it was still relatively loud. Especially considering that everyone was watching the projections up above the displayed different channels. I glanced at the nearest one before ordering one of the local beverages. Nothing alcoholic since I didn't really feel like it. Not bad. I took a sip of the hot drink, leaning back on the wooden chair as I savored the flavor. It was smooth and mellow with just the perfect hint of sweetness. Apparently, there was no sugar, but it tasted sweet to me. In any case, taking another sip of the drink, I felt at peace. But the peace was only momentary. When I opened my eyes again, my eyes fell on the nearest projection. Clank. That was when I lost grip of my drink, spilling whatever remained on it on my trousers. But I couldn't care less. Staring up ahead, my mouth opened as my heart dropped. Great. I had completely forgotten. Today was the day the interview was going to be aired.